Welcome to the Serious TV Drama Podcast. I'm Scott, and I forgot to come up with an introduction for this podcast for the two of us. Okay, well, whenever this person's on, I always go the legal route anyway, so... And I bet I've used this before, so I'll use it again. The Atticus Finch to my Jimmy McGill. We are joined by Brian. Hey, Brian.
Hey, Scott. Been a long time.
It has been a little bit of time here. I think the last time we recorded together, I believe it was when we were covering The Wire, and the number 3 episode in the greatest TV drama, blah, blah, blah countdown that we had going on for like a million years there. I think that's the last time you were here, right? You did do The Wire.
That was, I think that was in May, wasn't it?
That was in May. That was when we got to the big 3 with The Wire, Mad Men, and that other show.
And finally, one of our shows returned.
Yes. Something that we've been eagerly awaiting and wanting to talk about, and I have been promising up the yin-yang that we would, come hell or high water, we were going to do a podcast on it. We might have gotten delayed maybe a week longer than I had originally anticipated. So we're going to cover the first 4 episodes as opposed to the initial 3 that were released about a week and a half ago. But yeah, the main reason we are here today, tonight, and this week is to talk about Doom Patrol. This was a series I believe you beat me to because you actually initially watched it on DC Universe. Is that right? Am I remembering that correctly? And I didn't get access to it till it made its way onto HBO Max, but once I saw it, I fell in love with it. It is easily one of my favorite television series that are currently being made, and it hits every little sweet spot that I can adore about either be genre series or just great television in general.
Yeah, it's delightful. When I first found it, of all the DCU properties, this is the one that I think I said, "Oh my God, you have to watch this! It's insane," and in a good way, and it has maintained.
Right, absolutely. I mean, look, I don't, without lapsing into the DC versus Marvel thing or any of that kind of stuff, we'll just stick. We're not going to do that. But DC television productions, be it streaming or network, it's a mixed bag. One is either on board with the CW stuff or one despises the CW stuff. The things that might show up on the different streaming channels, you might get something, out of nowhere, like a Sweet Tooth, which turns out to be a DC property, or Lucifer, which is also a DC, you get all those kind of shows. This one, Doom Patrol, I think not only is it the best DC one, I would put it in the pantheon of the best TV comic book related productions that I've seen. I mean, if it's not the best one, it's in the conversation, as we like to say.
I totally agree with that. I think the level of quality, consistency, and quirkiness sets it above anything else we've seen.
Right. Absolutely. To me, it's almost like it's like a lighter version of Legion, if I could compare it to anything else that I've seen in the last few years, where Legion could go out there and be kind of bizarre or whatever. But Doom Patrol takes it, I think, 3 steps further. No matter what season we're talking about, whether it be season 1, season 2, or the 4 episodes we're going to be talking about, right now. So, without any further ado, or a doom. I hate myself sometimes. Sometimes, all the time. Let's start off with the first episode of the 3rd season, which was titled Possibilities Patrol. Now, look, you watch this episode and it's the premiere episode of season 3. But everything about this episode tells you that pretty much this was meant to be the season 2 finale. As I'm sure most folks know who watch Doom Patrol, like many other TV series, Doom Patrol had to cut short its previous season due to the whole COVID-19 pandemic. So when season 2 ended, although it did end with a certain cliffhanger aspect which could get away with being a finale, that's not really how this show has proven itself to operate based on how its previous season ended. But this episode, I mean, it's basically front loaded with tying up the whole season 2 showdown between little Dorothy and the now giant size Candlemaker, and which is basically handled by Dorothy, kind of removing them both from the earthly chessboard, so to speak, and banishing themselves to. I wasn't clear if that was supposed to be the moon or some sort of alternate dimension or something. It's one of those things you don't really want to think about because it's crazy powers. Who knows? When in doubt, we always say, "Oh, it must be some alternate dimension." There's many of them. But anyway, she banishes him there until essentially they will work things out and become friends again. And as for the team, and let me pause for just one moment. I'm just gonna kind of try to do something along the lines of a summation without getting too specific, and then we'll just launch into whatever we want to talk about. Just in case anyone's wondering, well, what is he doing? Why doesn't he let that well-mannered Southern gentleman speak? That's just what I'm doing. Anyway, as for the team, beyond dealing with the apparent death of the chief, we discover that they seem to all have some after effects after their waxing. In a sense, I would say they're all dealing with their own identity crises. Speaking of identities, you have Jane, who remains unconscious in the surface world while she's battling in the underground with, I don't know, I guess we can call her fake Miranda. I guess that's what we would call that character. Who herself turns out to be, I think they said she was basically like the living embodiment of a spreading infection. Is that kind of, yeah. She kind of referred to herself?
Yeah.
So in a way, she's kind of like represents COVID. No, anyway. Awful. People are dying out there, Scott. Moving on to someone else, you have Rita, a character who we've already has seen is someone who's constantly plagued by self-doubt. She's feeling it even more so after we see her break down during a rehearsal for the town's warped version of our town. I still don't know what to make of that. You have Cliff. Cliff is having issues with his robot parts, especially his arm and his hand. But, a scan that's performed indicates the problem may be more in his brain than with his mechanics. And then you have Larry. Larry is having his usual tug of war with the negative spirit. But he realizes, just like, and I had to make sure I got her name right, so I did look this up. Just like Valentina Volstock told him last season, he needs to go into space to truly find himself, or the truth. Whether we actually got there or not, well, we'll get there. And anyway, as the episode nears its close, we also introduce, I'm so excited, we introduce a new character who is played by Michelle Gomez, who I'm sure many of you will recognize from things like, well, obviously Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, The Flight Attendant, and for folks, I have not ever watched the series myself, but as I understand it from a close friend of mine, she played a major part way back when on Doctor Who.
Yes.
So here, she has been cast in a role, and they have not named her on the series, but I'm going to be referring to her by her character's name, who she actually is all the time, so buckle up, kiddies. She's been cast in the role of Madame Rouge. Now, I'm going to get a lot more into that character as with each successive episode, but I was just very excited that they introduced her. But how's it? Oh, she pops up when she comes drilling up through the street. So it's very.
It at first thought was mole people, but it was her.
Oh, by the way, if there's ever mole people, they need to be chanting like mole people, mole. Anyway, and it's clear by the questions that she asks. It's Isabel. She's like the little annoying star of that Our Town production. That she must be a time traveler, since she doesn't even know where she is. She doesn't know when she is. And then the attitude that she exhibits when poor stupid Isabel basically falls down into the abyss that Madame Rouge had just cracked open in the street kind of gives us a clue, if you didn't already know who she was, she's probably not a hero.
Right. No, she at first you think she's probably up to no good, then you're not sure, and then you're sure she is by the end of it. It was a nice introduction.
Oh yeah, and that's gonna, and that continues throughout the next few episodes. Oh, I should also mention, and now they've done it 2 times in these 4 episodes, and you'll have to refresh my memory if they ever did this in seasons 1 and 2, because I'm not recalling if they did. They might have, but I don't remember. We actually get a mid-credit scene, which, and again, that kind of goes with the whole, wow, this really feels like a season finale, guys. And that mid-credit scene is with the chief. I did neglect to mention in my little summation before, that we see him throughout the episode as a blue ghost haunting Cliff like he's Ben Kenobi bugging Luke or something. Except, unlike Luke, Cliff seriously, first curse for the podcast, seriously does not give a fuck. You can't talk about Cliff and not curse. I'm sorry. You can't do it.
Even Zombie Cliff says fuck.
So, back to that mid-credit scene. So clearly the chief is still kicking about the mansion, and he's about to say fucking himself and join the eternally moaning and banging couple, the sex ghosts, that have been floating around since last season. When something that I initially thought appeared to be Niall's soul gets ripped out of his spirit body. I don't really know another way to describe it. And in fact, we see it's, Kipley is it Willoughby?
Willoughby.
Willoughby's a former fun name to say, so we'll go Willoughby. I mean, I think his last name is Kipley. But look, he's basically Constantine. I mean, he's in fact, the way they've been depicting Constantine on Legends of Tomorrow for the last season or so, he's more Constantine than the guy playing Constantine right now. He has actually beheaded Niall's corpse, declaring that he ain't done with the chief. And I was like, yeah, okay, that it's Doom Patrol. That pretty much makes sense.
Yeah, so, I want to add a couple of things that when you said space ghost or sex ghost, space ghost. Wow. When you mentioned the sex ghost, the thing I love about this show is if you've watched it, they keep bringing things back. Like we get an appearance from Danny, the street in this, now Danny the ambulance. And, so I love that those little pieces of previous seasons and some of the quirky characters get brought back.
Right.
So we see Danny, Danny helps transport Chief apparently to be buried. So it was nice to see Danny again.
Right. I guess I had made note because I didn't remember if he showed up in this episode or was the next episode was his first appearance. So
it's both, but he showed up first on this to take Chief's body.
Oh, excellent. That's right. Oh, by the way, I'm sure the microphone caught it because I can hear it in my cans here. Of course, as we're talking about Danny the street becoming Danny the ambulance, I'm in New York City. Those were ambulance signs that just went by. So, it was either that or a fire engine. I know it was one, but it's like, there you go. Doesn't matter if we're recording day or night. You're going to hear them eventually around here. Again, just to finish up on the episode, or at least opine on it a little bit here. I took the entire one site within a few minutes. As I said from the get-go, this is a season finale, not a season premiere, and taking it that way. Oh, by the way, I totally neglected to rewatch the final episode from the previous season because I just didn't have the time, but I remembered it pretty well. But thinking of it in those terms made me, oddly enough, enjoy the episode more because I felt, this felt like a nice way to wrap up the season. And now you've dropped these other little bombs on us to intrigue us about what's going to happen in the next season with this mysterious time traveling drilling character. I just happen to know who she is. And wait, he's cut off the dead chief's head? What's that about? And everyone's left in a certain feeling, everyone's storylines are pretty much unsettled. So, there's like, okay, we've got fodder for dramatics with each of the characters. I mean, I left out, stuff with Vic and Cyborg because, I can't talk about everything.
Right.
I do like some of his stuff as we proceed, and I'm not skipping over it. Plus, I like his version of Cyborg better than the Snyder version, so there's that too. But I thought it was a good start to the season.
Yeah, I liked it the same way you did, in that it brought us back to where we were. And while we were bummed we didn't get a conclusion to that season, it was almost it was almost more rewarding to see last season closed and new season started.
Right.
And probably forced them to tighten up the storytelling to get it in one episode,
Yes.
which may have helped it in a way that if it was separated, it wouldn't have been. But I thought it was really enjoyable. But you could clearly tell they were tying the themes of last season, like the thing about Cyborg, even that the woman he was involved with last year, they have the little bit where, he lets her go when she's breaking into quorum. That reverberates, the consequences of that reverberate throughout this season going forward. But I thought they did a nice job of balancing, giving you a satisfying finale with starting off a new season, a new story that made you interested in where it would go. So I really enjoyed the first episode.
Yeah, I thought they did compared to a couple other series I watched that had a similar situation where they had truncated previous seasons and then they had to pick up the story with the next season. I don't think the other shows I watched did it quite as well, but I won't go down the rabbit hole of talking about those series because we're here to talk about Doom Patrol. We're here to talk about the second episode now. Second episode was Vacay Patrol, where the team, let's say they take an ill-fated vacation to some bizarre little mountain resort. This episode. But I have to start off with this. I know there's only a few of you out there who listen. There should be more. We're already fans of the comic book characters, the Doom Patrol, and that universe of bizarreness. You had to love the opening of this episode because we start off in 1949 and we meet the Brain, who is the leader of the nefarious organization, the Brotherhood of Evil. The one that the X-Men people ripped off with the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Anyway, I'm going to have to get a few comments in like that. I can't help it because, they did. I mean, come on. Anyway, we also meet his right-hand man, or should I say right-hand ape, because Monsieur Malat is there. He is a beret-wearing, machine-gun-toting, talking gorilla. Take that, Gorilla Grodd. He's got a beret. And then we subsequently meet, and I did not know this character was going to be in this season because I guess I didn't watch that trailer closely enough, and I had not read anything about the season other than the casting of Gomez as Madame Rouge. I did not know we were going to meet the green-skinned Gargoyles the Decimator, and also his Victrola playing and crimson-skinned lackey Samuelson, who, by the way, marvelously played by Billy Boyd, that folks will know from all the Lord of the Rings movies and such.
Yeah, absolutely great casting.
Amazing. So I'll just, because I'm always fearful of mispronouncing exactly how his name is, because it's one of those, I've always read the name, I've never actually had to say it out loud. I'm just going to call him Garg. So Garg is given a mission to eliminate a target, and the photo he's given, it looks like a publicity shot of one Rita Farr. And this will be the way to get to Niles Calder, he is told. And apparently Garg approves of that motivation. But then we zoom through the years as Garg introduces himself to the community where that resort is. And he waits for his mission to kick in. And as we go through the years, 70 years go by. And nothing. No messages on their big trunk of buttons and wires and whatnot. Nothing. Now, I do think, if I'm not mistaken, at one point we do see a headline, a newspaper, showing that the Brotherhood of Evil has been defeated, and they were defeated by the original Doom Patrol, who I believe we met in season 1 of Doom Patrol. Great episode, if I recall.
Yep.
This one with Mento and everything. So, I loved that whole opening for a number of reasons.
It reminded me of what is sometimes great in Stargirl, that the reminiscence of the past, when you see the villains brought in with the tide of the past and the tide of the history of DC Comics, it was a really neat beginning. And I love that this show doesn't try to modernize or make the villains or the good guys too cool. Like, Brains in Closure looks like kind of cheesy but cool.
Right.
in a weird way, in a vintage way. Like, but it's what you imagine a 50s person would envision for that, and not, they don't try to modernize it for what they think an audience today would want.
Right.
I thought Monsieur Mala and the brain starting it, Gargoax walking in, setting that history to build upon with Gargoax, I thought was brilliant, and really made this episode even more absurd and enjoyable when what plays out.
Right. And by the way, as they've already shown with with the Doom Patrol characters themselves, as well as, and then you add what the nature of both the Brain and Monsieur Mala are, even though we saw them in 1949, there is no reason at some point in time, no pun intended, we could see them again. Why?
Right.
Everyone else is still around. Plus now you've also introduced the concept of time travel, so anything is possible. Anyway.
Well, and don't forget the luggage when they're leaving, the buzzer goes off. So who sent
Right.
that alert?
Exactly. Excellent point. It was weird. Maybe I'm having a hallucination because I am, getting old, whatever. I almost could have sworn we've already had a reference or saw the Brain in a previous episode, but maybe I'm thinking of something animated instead. Maybe he showed up somewhere like on Harley Quinn or something. I don't know. But
I don't think we've seen the Brain, but I
Okay.
think there was reference to the Brain
Okay.
As a supervillain in a previous season. I don't think we've seen the Brain before.
All right. Well, I will be talking a little bit more about the Brain actually later in this podcast for a very important reason, but we're not there yet. So let's get back to the episode. We get back to present day and with the team. We see that Cliff is he's being a little too much of a grandpa, and he's pretty much on the verge of driving his daughter and her wife out of their mind, which is what you'd expect. He's trying to, he's trying to make up for his, years of neglect and everything else. But
Yeah.
I'm just feeling bad I'm feeling bad for the daughter's wife, because I'm pretty sure she didn't sign up for this. It's like, wait, so your dad's a big walking, he's basically the Iron Giant, but curses a lot? Or something.
Right. Right. And when he holds your baby, he starts shaking, and he can crush something with his hand. So
Oh, yeah.
that'd be a little nerve wracking.
Yeah, I'd be like, yeah. So, and then you've got Larry, who has, traveled up into space. And by the way, and while he did it, his bandages kind of, dissolved or disappeared. And, Matthew Bomer, wow. I'm sorry, if you got a name like that, why wouldn't you? Anyway, sorry. He gets to actually appear on screen, which is kind of nice. Because I'm still confused about something with that character and the actors that portray him. I know 2 different actors play the character. I know it's always Bomer's voice. That I'm sure of. And I know when he's in bandages, it's the other fellow who's I don't have his name off the top of my head, and I apologize, but bad podcaster. I should know the other actor's name. My question is, and I think I know the answer, but we've seen that character a number of times this season, just in the makeup, where he's obviously been burned and melted away, whatever. Is that Bomer, or is it the other guy?
That's a great question, and I don't know the answer. That's a wonderful question that we should look into before the next episode.
Yeah, because I want to say part of me wants to say it's Bomer doing it, because part of me thinks that would make more sense, but not necessarily. Because maybe one of the reasons Bomer even agreed to do this, I mean, not that he's like, it's not like he's freaking Tom Hanks or something, but still, was because, well, you're going to be doing some voice work, and you might appear from time, like Brendan Fraser's situation with Robot Man, or Cliff Steele, I should say. it's not it's not a heavy lift, no pun intended for Robot Man, but it's not a heavy lifting job for Brendan Fraser, because he doesn't get to appear on screen as himself very often on the show. So I thought, I always thought he and Bomer had a kind of a similar situation. But when I'm seeing him with the seeing the character with the makeup on, I'm like, I don't know. I can't be sure who it is. Yeah, we will look into that and we will find out before the next podcast. So, yes, he'd gone into space and he's without bandages. He's smooth skinned once again, and he eventually encounters what appears to be himself. But this is the modeled burned version. But is it? Or is it a form that the negative spirit has taken in this rather star-filled other dimension? Look, yet another dimension. It's always other dimensions. It's really the stuff with Larry and the negative spirit. I enjoy it. I like the performance. Maybe I like it because even right up to this point now, do I really have any idea for sure what's going on there? I don't. I'm not sure. I do remember certain things from the comics a little bit, but not much. Not to this extent. And I don't know. And I know they're also playing with certain metaphors and what things actually represent, which is very kind of neat that they're doing that. But I'm just... Larry is easy. Larry, without a doubt, is easily the most mysterious situation of the four of them. And what's going on? Is it 4 or 5? I can't remember at this point. So it's one of those things. It is 5, right? Okay, because because apparently in this universe, Cyborg's in the Doom Patrol, whatever.
Right.
Sorry. Apparently, every universe, Cyborg is a part of a team that he shouldn't be part of. Sorry. He's a Teen Titan. He's not in the Justice League. He's not in the Doom Patrol.
So you're saying that to DC, his name should be Triborg, right? Like try him out in every team.
Try hard. Anyway. So I'm enjoying it. It's definitely visually nice as well, but it's kind of one of those things. And obviously when we get to the latest episode, that's yet another weirdo mystery. We'll figure that one out too. Or, we're not gonna figure it out. Forget it. Let's get back to this episode. What else? Oh, Rita. Rita is having a problem with the responsibility that Chief left her with. Believing that she would be a hero, rise to the occasion and whatnot with basically a magical, mysterious key, of course, because when in doubt, it's writing 101. It's a key. Where does this key go to? Is it a MacGuffin like the key in Hitchcock's Notorious, or is it a key that can open up all new worlds? We don't know. But apparently, when an unknown alarm goes off, and Rita does find where that key goes, it goes in this little lock in the secret compartment, and she goes through the trouble of unlocking it at least, and you see this very, very retro-looking phone ringing. She literally does not answer the call. You're not a hero. After all that, she also, I again use the word correctly, she literally cannot keep it together.
Right.
And then she dissolves. At least she gets ready in advance. She, yanks out a plant from a big pot, whatever, and she just dissolves into a big pile of Rita goo. So, okay, I kind of gave him the shaft a little bit before. Vic, as you had mentioned, he hasn't been doing great since he helped out his on again, off again, what the hell is going on with her girlfriend, because she would have been, the whole thing where she would have been nabbed by authorities, and he gives her a second chance, he intervenes a little bit there. The problem is that Star Labs and his dad know what he did, so they pretty much neutralized his abilities, which I guess coincides with turning his eye and chest light from red to blue. Okay. So he's got, in a way, and as we're going to see from this episode on, Vic has kind of got one of those classic problems. He's got dad issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's got, he's not the only one who's got dad issues, but he's got the most overt dad issues of any character.
Right. He has ongoing dad issues.
Yes.
Like they're not from the past or, they're ongoing. And I wanted to ask you a question because I don't know the answer.
Yep.
The Star Labs in this show seems much more robust and more of an ongoing, operation than it seems in most other representations. Is Star Labs typically like a big operation, a few people?
No.
Because it seems like sort of a bigger, like government type operation than in a lot of other representations of Star Labs.
Star Labs is supposed to be what you just said. I would say for folks who aren't aware of it, do not go by what how quote, I'm going to put it in air quotes, how Star Labs is represented on something like, say, The Flash. That's not really Star Labs. However, if you want to go for decent representation of how Star Labs has ever been represented, I would refer folks to certain animated fare. Either you can go back to the 90s for the original Superman animated series. Star Labs played a very major part in many episodes of that with Professor Hamilton and whatnot. I believe I think we see Star Labs being used to some extent in Young Justice, if I'm not mistaken. I can't be sure, but I think it is. But yeah, Star Labs is supposed to be a much bigger deal. Yeah,
it's supposed to be like a full facility, like
yes.
not like a hideout like it is in other stuff, like not like a clubhouse. It's more of a full facility.
Yeah, they're a much bigger deal. Yeah.
Okay, I thought so, but
yeah,
I wasn't sure.
Yeah. So who else? Jane. Oh, we love Jane. Jane is still processing what's been happening with Kay, the little girl that she and all the other personalities were pretty much meant to protect. But at this point, and what happens in this episode, it almost kind of feels like their positions have been reversed. Mm-hmm. So you've got all this going on with everybody. So naturally, the big pile of goo thinks it's a perfect time for them to go on a vacation. Yeah, that makes sense. But maybe in a way it does. Maybe they need to take a vacation away from themselves, even though they don't know what they are. I don't know. So they take their vacation, and that is where Cliff meets Garg, and they get along like gangbusters. Although, and again, it's just because the show is just it's drama, but it's comedy as well. Why would Cliff be in a sauna? There is nothing about that makes any sense whatsoever. You're a walking pile of metal. You probably don't want to be in a room filled with hot steaming water. It just kind of doesn't go,
Nothing helps the robot man like a nice oxidation treatment, go in and get moisture in all your joints. And, but obviously it's set up because it's maybe the most wonderful scene of the episode. Just the two of them reminiscing and realizing they have Niles Calder in common.
Yeah. And it's also, I believe it's one of the scenes that first, I mean, although we had obviously had met the character throughout that marvelous opening of the episode, this is the scene where we get a really nice taste of what Gargoyle's personality is. And a lot of that might be the fact that this is what his personality has become over the course of the last 70 years and him waiting all this time, as opposed to how he would have been if we'd met him and talked with him in 1949, for example. I always remembered Gargoyle being kind of an a-hole, so I was kind of pleased that he's like, oh, he's kind of cool in this. And
yeah, he's super chill.
Yeah, he kind of reminds me of Brian a little bit. Anyway, so later, when they're all in that big dining hall, we see Vic is kind of and Vic is the only one, which gotta give props to Vic. Vic is the only one who's suspicious of Garg and Samuelson. Pretty much when they enter the dining hall with Samuelson's usual bluster with the Victrola, doing the whole, it's like a character out of Game of Thrones introducing the Queen or something. But Vic is chided and shouted down by everyone else. Because of course they are. Because the one thing to remember when we see these scenes is Vic is the one who was established from the get-go that he already thought of himself as a hero. He was already doing heroic things. They don't. They weren't. They don't. So it makes perfect sense. He would be the one to be like that, and everyone else would be like, nah, nah. Leave the guy alone. We're on vacation. Why?
Right.
It makes perfect sense. But later, when Rita does finally go from being a bag of goo to taking her form, and I love that the bag becomes like an outfit for her. She is spotted by Samuelson, who, of course, is excited to resume the mission. But, moments later or a little bit later or whatever, Garg essentially overhears the gang's kind of depressing conversation, including everything that Rita has to say. He just really wants to just let it go. He feels there's no more mission. There's no more Brotherhood of Evil. There is no real reason to bother these nice people. And I believe he does refer to them as these nice people. And I keep thinking, well, they're not all nice, but okay. And that's when they're finally leaving, that's when, as you pointed out, that mysterious trunk device goes off. And of course, it's Samuelson who decides to take the bull by the horns. So even though Garg kind of rushes in to try to warn everybody, and I know I skipped, by the way, in my little summation here, I know people who enjoyed this episode, I know you're going to say, oh my God, you skipped like the best part. No, I didn't. We're going to bring it up. Calm down. We'll get to it. I'm leaving that for Brian because I know he wants to bring it up. I know he will. I'll be shocked if he doesn't. Anyway, Samuelson rushes in with that with that lovely retro. It is like something out of the 1950s ray gun. And the episode ends with what appears to be the death of Rita, Jane, Cliff, and Vic. Oh, by the way, I might have forgotten, when Rita is about to try to bolt out the door, she runs into someone, well, guess what? That's Madame Rouge, who was shapeshifted into Rita, who then locks her in with no escape. Because that's pretty important. Because there's a theory. And I subscribe to this theory. Even though this latest episode, I don't think squashes the theory. It may even lend credence to it. But maybe I should say... Should I save my theory about Madame Rouge till we finish the 4th episode? I should save it for that, right? Because that way we'll...
Yes.
Yes, that makes sense.
Save it.
Okay, good. That way we can talk about... Well, first of all, you know what I left out. You must know what I left out. You know the thing that probably people who talked about the most other than Gargoax and Cliff, whatever, in this episode. Or maybe I should... or maybe
you should say it, because I have one, but I don't know if I'm thinking of the same thing as you. I'll let you go first. I'll be timid. You be brave.
The dance.
Oh yeah.
The dance. The inexplicable but beautifully wonderful. Why are they doing this? But I don't care. It's the dance. That came out of nowhere, and I loved it. It was just I mean, I'm not going to say it brought a tear to my eye. Although I do cry at the drop of a hat, apparently, but there was something just so lovely. I love using the word lovely, by the way. Lovely about that, and I thought, this is a moment where they're a family. This is it. Yeah. This is it. Because they are, I mean, obviously they are a family. The way they bicker with each other and the way you can even see what the kind of relationships have become, whether you have the very much brother and sister relationship of Larry and Rita and this one. And Vic is almost like the cousin who ended up staying over longer than anyone wanted him to. And, and Cliff is the annoying grumpy uncle that no one, that they're all stuck with. But here, they've had moments on the show along these lines. I guess in the context of this episode, I didn't see it coming. And then I went, oh, that's just, I just really love that part. I adored it, in fact.
Yeah. These are characters that every season, we've talked about before, that the thing about Doom Patrol is they're always processing trauma, and and where they ended up as a result of trauma and things that happened to them. It wasn't a choice. They didn't take a serum, or, things happened that they ended up that way. And there's humor, but there's usually very little joy for these characters.
Right.
There's always a tinge of sadness. This was almost like a moment, that you felt like this was like one of the few carefree moments you actually saw them in. And so I think that's why it was particularly touching.
I agree. It kind of, in a weird way, it was, although albeit briefer, and instead of involving only one of the characters and along with a whole shitload of extras, it involved, the four other primary DP members, even though they don't consider themselves the Doom Patrol, but they are. Shut up, Jane. Kind of remember me of a little bit of the crazy musical scene from the Big Danny in the Street episode.
Yeah.
In the first season with where Matthew Bomer got to show off his Broadway chops and whatnot. But I remember going, oh, it's such an unexpectedly great, lovely scene, especially for a character who's, while they all, I mean, we've talked, I think, if I recall, are fantastic. And if you never listened to it, guys, you should go back and find it and listen to it when we did the Doom Patrol podcast a year ago or whatever the hell it was now. It's neck and neck between Larry and Cliff as far as who's got the more tragic situation. Because sometimes I want to say it's Cliff because he's just a brain, and but Larry's life has just been so, it's a hard life. It's sad. But
Larry before he became what he was an outcast. Cliff wasn't.
Right.
And so Larry never got to be 100% his true self. And so you might say Cliff was almost too much of what he wanted, and that's why he ended up the way he was. But Larry never was able to be who he was. And that's sort of the celebration of the party and Danny the Street and all that, the joy in that of people being different, but being able to have fun and celebrate, I think was why that was so resonant with Larry and seeing that. So, I mean, there were some really sad moments when Cliff's daughter asked him if he could feel the baby.
Right.
And, thinking you're holding your granddaughter, but you can't feel her. But he says, no, but I remember how it was with you.
Right. Yes. That's nice.
Which is, a great line. But yeah, those two are particularly tragic. And so it's nice whenever we get to see this group have a little bit of fun.
Right. And of course, if you're going to have fun, what's going to happen? Just like in a horror movie, it means that you're going to die. So,
you smoke pot and have sex, you must now die.
Yeah, that's exactly how it works. Paige and Jason Voorhees. So I think I should use that as the segue to the last of the first 3 episodes in the first week premiere. And we will be covering the 4th one too. I haven't forgotten. But that one was titled, most appropriately, Undead Patrol. Now, I should mention, and I might have mentioned this in our podcast over a year ago. And if I'm repeating myself, who cares? It was a year ago. Shut up. Death is not a new thing for the Doom Patrol. I mean, the original run of the original team from the Silver Age, the 60s going into the early 70s, but the early 60s, actually ended with killing off the entire team. I think that's happened at least once. So, like I said, they're always killing the Doom Patrol. So, again, as anyone knows, when in the world of comic books, outside of maybe Uncle Ben and maybe one or two others, that don't come to mind right now. No one ever stays dead in the world of comics. It just you don't. So back to this episode. Larry has returned to Doom Mansion. By the way, I didn't know it was called Doom Mansion. I'll admit that was a little sooner than I expected, but okay. Yeah, but he's clearly far from having settled his problems with the negative spirit. But anyway, 4 boxes get delivered. These big boxes are filled with styrofoam peanuts. And the corpses of his 4 friends. Now, Dorothy shows up a little bit later. And we see that he's actually topped how Dorothy had left her dead dad in state, essentially, for over a week in Doom Mansion, back in the first episode of the season. And he's wrapped up all four of them in bandages, and he has them posed around the dining room table. Yeah, that was disturbing. But
Very.
the next thing, we do see our dead foursome. They're on a boat. It's basically a play on the concept of crossing the river Styx. Most folks are familiar with that from whether it be from religion or fiction or mythology. They are on their way to the afterlife or the underworld. Except at one point, everybody on the boat falls unconscious except Rita. And then she has to fake it. So Cliff, Vic, and Jane, through the course of this, going through what we learn is called like the Tunnel of Souls, they get to have these afterlife experiences that Rita does not get to have. So, like we had hinted at before, Cliff encounters his dead dad, and that's when we really learn about his dad issues. And I was like, oh, look, the dude from Orange is the New Black. It's too bad you couldn't have gotten into a scene with Rita because, not Rita, I'm sorry, Jane, because I wonder if they recognize you. No, anyway, that makes no sense. Vic meets up with his mom. And who do they talk about? His dad. And Jane, I guess you'd say she meets up with her abuelita. And Kay is there as well. But during all this, while they're having these experiences, Rita is awake, and it's like central processing before you're either shipped to heaven or hell or whatever the next phase is supposed to be. Now back to the world of the living, Dorothy uses her buddy Danny the Street, who we now know as Daddy the Ambulance. Now, this is important. They fetched 3 youngsters from overseas. These 3 kids make up the Dead Boys Detective Agency, which is essentially comprised of the ghosts of 2 dead boys from many, many years ago, and 1 living girl who is essentially the psychic connector. Now, this should be especially exciting, and I just got a reference Brian made online a little while ago.
Yes.
It should be especially exciting for let's just say, I hope she's listening, the too cool for school uppity comic book crowd. Because these characters, unlike so many others that we've seen in the Doom Patrol so far, these characters are actually from the stories of the Sandman, the Neil Gaiman comic book that has a hugely rabid following like few others. People are cavilling over this audiobook version that's out there right now, and Netflix just released a trailer for an upcoming series. I don't know why that series is not an HBO Max series. I guess Netflix got to them first and they ponied up, $1 billion. I don't know. Very exciting. But it was one of the, as I'm watching the episode, when the first time I heard the reference Dead Boys Detective Agency, I was like, oh, wait a minute. I've heard of that. And it didn't, I have to confess, it didn't totally click into place for me until there's a point in the episode where one of the boys makes a reference to the actual personification of death as a woman, and an attractive one at that. And I went, oh, that's it. They're from Sandman. That's it. Because I know about the whole thing with death and all that stuff. And so I was like, oh, wow, they're really reaching all parts of the DC universe for this show. That's kind of exciting. And apparently, just on one additional side note before we get back to the context of the episode, I think there's actually going to be an HBO Max series based on the Dead Boy Detective Agency now. I think that's in awesome. Production. We don't know if it's going to feature these 3 actors that play them here, or if they will be recast. I mean, I don't know. They could go either way. I mean, my initial instinct to say, well, why wouldn't you just use the people you already have? But they may want to go with maybe someone who's got a bit more of a name. But then again, if they're kids, who's going to have a name at this point? So we going to cast the kids from Stranger Things or something? Come on. Anyway, back to the episode. the dead boys and girl, they help, live girl, they help Larry contact Rita. And then after a lot of convincing and persuading, eventually the two ghost boys agree to help Larry try to bring everybody back. And this is how I make this a really quick summation so we can really get into it. And they do. No, this is going to be... No. There's a little mystery about this. Like, for example, there's one melty-faced monster-looking gent who comes to Rita's aid and clearly knows her, but she says she has no idea who it is, which made me kind of go, very interesting. They also, I'm going to throw this in because I know it's important for the next episode. They also encounter this other character who I didn't know until like 3 hours ago was referred to as the Night Nurse, not to be confused with the 1970s Marvel comic Night Nurse, which is a much different character, who I think essentially appeared in some of the Netflix Marvel series now. I think this is the character that's played by Rosario Dawson, technically.
Yes.
Wow, totally. I'm pulling that out of every orifice now. I'm just coming up with shit now. But she tries to... Well, she essentially tries to keep them from escaping, whatever, and encounters them and attacks them, whatever. And I didn't think anything of it at the time, but apparently that does play a major part in the next episode. But we'll get to that when we talk about the next episode. Because I want to finish this one, because when this episode ends, when everyone's back at home, who should come humming down the stairs and waltzing into the kitchen other than the, you don't know her name yet, but I'm telling you her name is Madame Rouge herself. So this episode, it should also be pointed out just for the bizarre coincidence of it. I think you know this already, and a few of our listeners might, if they watched the other show. It was a very strange coincidence that the two DC live action TV series that are both currently churning out new episodes on HBO Max right now, both had an episode in the same week with their own rather unique and bizarre depiction of the afterlife that took up pretty much almost the entire episode. Yes, because Titans did that too, a totally different way, but it's just a very weird coincidence.
It is, and both of those episodes both sort of take place at the place before you go to the final place. Right. So sort of purgatory. They both sort of deal with what's going on in purgatory, and I love this episode. I love the Dead Boys. I thought this. I always like to see a different take on what people envision of things, and seeing this take on it, I really enjoyed it. And the thing I wondered about is we're starting to see Dorothy have like the sort of knowledge that her dad did. Mm-hmm. Like when Larry, she shows up and is freaked out by the mummies in the dining room. She says, well, I know who to get to help. And so she has a network of people that can solve almost any problem. So she's able to reach out, and the scenes with her and the girl who are, when they're seeing the objects, and being able to hear people, I greatly enjoyed it, but I really enjoyed the stuff in the other realm.
Yeah. One of the things I really enjoyed about that depiction, and I'm hesitant, and this is in no way a correction, because some people get annoyed when you correct them, other podcasters, but anyway, who I know one of them might listen to this, and yeah, I'm talking about you. That's right, but I'm fucking with you, so don't worry about it. I appreciate you, even though most of your taste is up your ass. Anyway, why did I say that? What's wrong? I'm not drinking. I have no excuse. The thing is, both. What makes it it makes it a little trickier. It's funny. Whenever something is depicted, one thing that the creators or the writers or whoever will always be quick to say is like, no, it's not purgatory. like Lost. No. That wasn't purgatory. Even though everything about it kind of, okay, it's not, but it kind of sort of sound. What's a phrase that I've heard these people use when I watch this sports talk thing? It's not purgatory, but I would say it's purgatory adjacent.
Adjacent.
No, you just say adjacent.
Oh, adjacent. Okay.
Yeah, just say adjacent.
Okay.
Because for both what they do on Titans, which that's not what we're talking about right now, although we could talk about it a little bit later, maybe. And this, I think there are certain points where they try to make okay, it's not purgatory, but so it almost takes almost like a Brazil kind of. It's like no, it's just almost not bureaucratic. What am I thinking of? It's almost like this factory processing. It's like they're all, these you expect there's going to be like a sign, heaven, hell, whatever. And purgatory is where the refuge goes like, oh, we haven't made up our mind for you guys. But it's almost like the way station before you get to those places. Where purgatory
it's like the Amazon warehouse of death.
Yes, there you go. Perfect. And that's probably why those guys are also act so pissed off all the time because they don't get any bathroom breaks. But I also enjoyed it because I love that the show can take me to totally different types of places in any given episode. That they genre bend. Mm-hmm. Because this is obviously what we see in an episode like this is very much feels like the realm of more of the supernatural and mysticism and things of that nature and the paranormal and all that kind of stuff. Whereas you might have another episode which is definitely far more, hardcore science fiction, whatever. I like that they do a lot of, and they do a lot of retro stuff like, oh, that's something clear out of the 1950s. Heck, they practically ended the season 1 with giant monsters fighting each other. Like,
right.
A Godzilla-sized rat and stuff. What the hell was that? That's on your end this time, I think. But it's a very enjoyable episode, and that's really all I want to say about it that I can think of right now until I remember something else. I can always bring it up because I want to get to, but unless you have something more before we get to the next.
Well, I just want to say I thought the particularly good bit of writing that I enjoyed was where Larry talks to the one dead boy about what the world is like now compared to when he grew up, and about how, you don't have to be like he says, seems like you all really like each other.
Yes.
And the kid says, well, I'm not allowed to talk about that. Like you don't talk about feelings like that. And sort of sharing a moment of, what, as bad as it was for him in the 1950s, or 60s, it was as bad as it was bad and worse for that kid, and that kid never got to, grow up and be a man and,
right.
and have any of that. I thought that was a really well-written, touching interaction between the two of them.
Right. It was interesting because between that scene with that kid, and then we also learn through words and quick images what had happened to the other boy and why he's so deathly afraid of the water, which at first comes off like some bizarre little quirk, and then you see what happened to him, and you realize, oh, okay, that's a bit more legit. So two characters for most of the time they spend in the episode are, I definitely like the characters, but they're both different levels of snark, especially the one who, the first one that Larry was speaking to. I kept thinking, oh, if they are they remaking Harry Potter? Is this the new Lucius Malfoy? Because I feel like he's going to be. Come on. But I like that they were able to paint certain things about them in a very quick fashion. I almost wish they'd been able. They tried to do that a little bit with Crystal as well through her conversations with Dorothy. And I'm not saying it doesn't work, but I think maybe they do a nicer job at it with these two. And then again, they're also both dead, so maybe
right.
They already have a built-in tragic nature.
There's a little more baked in.
Yeah,
there's a little more. But the thing that I love about this show is like when we meet them, and they say, well, we got to go. And they say, what about him? And you don't even see the guy till the very end. And there's like some possessed guy on the ceiling. And they're like, he'll still be there.
Right.
It's
love that.
Really, this show probably balances the absurd and the emotional as well as almost any show on TV, period. I mean, and we'll get to the next episode, the absurd, because boy, does it get absurd in a great way. But it, and I keep pausing on but. Maybe that's a Freudian slip, but it's really. I thought this was a really good episode, and when we get to the next episode, and you realize, there are consequences that you didn't think of at the time. Mm-hmm. That whatever was spit on them, or the process of going to the underworld, even getting out, still had a consequence. I thought it was really well done. Really enjoyed it, and hope we see more of the Dead Boy Detective Agency.
Right. So let's get to that latest episode. I just watched it just a few hours ago, which was titled. Well, it's titled Undead Patrol. So, as you just hinted at, and again, I don't know if it's overtly said in the episode, so I will confess it didn't occur to me initially, and I had written I was writing notes, like, wait, I don't understand why there's then I went back and I read something, I was like, oh, it was when Night Nurse kind of puked at them, and that's why. I was like, okay, which is almost so ridiculous, and it almost works better for the show. I mean, So let us go. Basically, we pick up beyond dealing with who or what the strange woman is doing in their house. Our heroes have just made the return from the afterlife, and over the course of the opening, scenes of this episode, they are slowly, and don't seem to be aware of it with each other for some strange reason, but they are most assuredly turning into classic brain-craving zombies. You toss in Willoughby, who is still messing around with the chief's head, even trying to hook back up with his love, that spectral unicorn thing from another dimension.
Baphomet.
Yeah, I'm not even going to try. But he apparently, we don't see it, but apparently he loses the chief's decapitated head, as well as some partial but far from complete reveals, and then the return of those vicious mutt-munching butt creatures. Yeah, it's your typical Doom Patrol episode. My favorite conceit, I'd call it, of this episode were all the subtitles informing us of what the gang's zombie moans and groans were actually trying to say. That was seriously funny. Not to mention the fact that it's like Han Solo can speak Wookiee. It's like Willoughby can speak zombie and knows what they're all saying.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fantastic. And, the thing that is so funny to me that's both on point and ridiculous is, the guy, I forget his name, that steals the head, is from, is it the Bureau of Normalcy,
Yes.
or Office of Normalcy? And,
Bureau of Normalcy. It's Darren, like Darren Jones or something like that.
Jones, yeah. But it's like, of course, like the Bureau of Normalcy would hate the Doom Patrol, and the show itself is so against, playing it safe, that it's a great conceit, and that guy then, turns into munching werebutt. I think is what Jane calls it. Like, oh, now it's werebutts.
Yeah.
It is fantastic. And, seeing the, and I like that the joke too, where he's like, and I would tell you if anyone would just ask, like, where he does like the bad guy thing,
right?
And finally Willoughby goes, "Okay, fine," and then he goes, "Well, I'll tell you why."
Right, I love that. I love that play on that. That was amazing. It was legitimately one of the few times I can think of watching any movie or series or whatnot where we're watching and we really do not care at all about this quote unquote villain. We don't care about him at all. So the fact that they have no interest in what he's really saying, it's like, all right, fine.
Right. It's that sort of meta, like almost like, early Community type joke that's meta and funny, but also speaks about the actual thing that's happening on the screen. Right. And so that whole scene was great, seeing them, and seeing them fight as zombies. It's absurd and great.
I'm very impressed with how limber they were at certain points during that fighting. I was like, Larry, you're like a broken body, all jumbled. What? How are you able to wield a chainsaw? How'd you manage that, son? Yeah, it was beautifully absurd. And while all this is going on, to me, I mean, the zombie stuff was the fun stuff, then the silly stuff, but not really the important stuff. As far as ongoing stuff, the most important thing, in my view, well, not just my view, it's got to be the most important thing. Beyond, is Larry pregnant? Because how else? It seems that's what they're hinting at. Okay, he's puking and he's got a strange growth happening in his abdominal area. It looks like you're pregnant of something or some form of it. Did the negative spirit leave a little something behind? What's going on there? But the mystery surrounding the character that I and pretty much most people who know anything or watching the show know Madame Rouge, I think is the most intriguing thing about this episode, and all the specific team troubles, like Larry and Vic's issues with his dad and whatever. She does use that key to unlock this, that opens that, which eventually leads to, because no one can do anything on anything modern. It's always got to be an old VHS tape, or in this, now it's an old film reel. At least it makes sense because it was actually shot in the 1940s, so okay, I'll go along with it. And she puts on this film, and no, Lost fans, it's not a Dharma thing. I know you were all thinking that. Like, it's a Dharma Initiative training film. No, it's a little film brought to you by the Sisterhood of Dada. And at first it seems like it's just a strange woman sitting there. With I think she might have, does she have a cat in her lap? Is that why they keep referring to the cat?
It looked like it, yes.
Yeah, probably a dead cat. But she's just staring and almost has a hypnotic effect on Madame Rouge as she's watching, to a certain point where all of a sudden she gets up and kind of does, almost as though she's a puppet, she does this whole dance routine. And then we subsequently see on the film a bird fly into the frame and then transform into her. And she does this whole dance routine on screen there. So at that point, as far as this character who is claiming, and I guess she does, she has amnesia. So she's trying to figure out who she is and why she's there and why she was trying to see Niles Calder. And even though she's been told that he died 2 weeks ago and so on and so forth. And apparently her time machine doesn't work anymore. But clearly, Vic can fix it because, whatever. Makes no sense whatsoever. Now, I'm thinking that, okay, did she get the amnesia in between episodes of this series? Because I wasn't getting the impression she had had amnesia before. So I'm a little confused by that, but I'm going to go along with it because I'm going to go, okay, you're adding to the mystery of it. Because you were able to shapeshift, and you were able to turn into Rita. You do know that, right? But now you don't know that. Confusion. But I don't mind.
Right.
It's okay.
Well, and I think, as I started to ponder this, and I'm sure your theory has to do with the ability to shapeshift that clearly she evidences that, was Rita calling the phone to Rita in time travel, or at some point did she assume the role of Rita, and that's the picture that Gargoax and them wanted to kill was her as Rita. when it actually wasn't Rita in the past, because clearly she has ties to the chief. He knows her, but she seems to not know him. So it's pretty interesting. So those were just the threads I thought of. So I think
Right.
it's time for you to hit us with your theory about her.
Well, you actually kind of you actually scooped a lot of it right there, which is excellent. So let's just go through what we know about her first so far, and as far as what she's been told. We know that she was part of or connected to some organization called the Sisterhood of Dada, and we know that her name supposedly was Laura DeMille. We have already seen on that film, and we've also seen in previous episodes, she can clearly shapeshift. Although right now her bout of amnesia seems to have her thinking she can just be a bird. And then later she unintentionally becomes like a huge, like, tractor tire or something. And she does find out later in the episode, after making a deal with the head before they eat Niall's head. And by the way, we haven't even touched on that. Just like, oh, that's the way they're cured. They eat Niall's. Okay. But she later finds out that Niles thought she was a threat that the Bureau of Normalcy had to eliminate. And she also, when she puts on that film reel again, she actually spots and notices that Rita Farr was on the set of that film.
Right.
Okay. So that's both what she knows and what we know through just surface information that we've seen in the show so far. What you touched on is what I think. That the photo that Gargoyles was given, which was of Rita Farr, it's more because she shapeshifted and that was the form or face she had taken. And that is why they weren't actually trying to hunt Rita Farr down at that point. They were trying to hunt her down. Rita Farr doesn't pop up and become a thing on the Chief's radar for another 6 years. She doesn't become, the goo lady until 1955, and that's 1949. So she doesn't have that connection to the Chief as of yet, unless someone wants to claim, oh, they're doing this really. They're planning way ahead of time, but really, they were planning to. Here's your mission, but you're gonna have to sit here and you're gonna have to wait for at least 6 years. No, that's silly. No. I mean, I know it's a silly show, but no. But the shape-shifting thing does make a lot more sense as far as that she had taken that identity. Now, the thing with Madame Rouge, okay, now, I don't know if this would qualify as being a spoiler, because this show, obviously, they are at the liberty to do whatever they want, and they can change things. They have changed things about a number of characters, including every single one of the principal Doom Patrol characters, Larry, Rita. All this is... And the comics themselves change from generation to generation. The Rita Farr of the 1960s is not like the Rita Farr of the 90s, for example, and so on and so forth. But what I can tell you is the basic overall origin of Madame Rouge is connected to a lot of things that we've already seen. That, yeah, she was Laura DeMille. She was an actress. And she also had an accident. Now, we have seen the Doom Patrol, all these characters had accidents, and then the Chief stepped in to do what he did. Now, when she had an accident, the result of her accident was that she developed a split personality, good and evil. Now, they might change this for the show. It would not surprise me because of how much they've heaped on the Chief in this series, which is a fairly accurate, to a certain extent, depiction of the Chief. They may make it that the Chief is the one who ends up performing surgery on Laura DeMille. Originally, it's supposed to be the Brain and Monsieur Mala. Now, they did show Monsieur Mala on the Brain. They were the ones who gave the mission to terminate her. So maybe they're going to keep that, and eventually we'll get back to it. Because the Brain performed surgery on her that basically maintains her evil personality being the dominant personality. And then she becomes the only female member of the Brotherhood of Evil. and and the Brotherhood of Evil were basically the arch nemesis evil team to fight the original Doom Patrol. Now, when they originally came up with that character, she was like a master of disguise and whatever. But yeah, they quickly made her into a character that could shapeshift, and they even went further with it as the years went on. She became someone who could stretch. So her abilities, in actuality, Rita Farr and Madame Rouge have very similar abilities, except Rita Farr just hasn't figured out on this show for whatever reason. I mean, they're stretching it up because she has like amazing abilities, and they just haven't gotten her to use them yet because she can't. She's trying. We've seen her like try to stretch her arms that one scene earlier this season, but she wasn't able to manage it really. But they have very similar abilities. Madame Rouge is a bit better at it, but then again, Rita is also able to grow into either change her size if they want to go that far. She could she's like the Atom, or Ant-Man to the Goliath, because she can also be a giant, whatever. So knowing that's her original origins, and then becoming Madame Rouge an even more interesting character because of that split personality situation. She's the kind of character that was always switching sides. She's fighting with the Brotherhood of Evil. She's fighting against him. She's fighting against the Chief. She's fighting for him. She has this weird relationship with the Chief, which is interesting because Rita also always had a weird relationship with the Chief. So it's like there's a certain twinning effect that happens, I would say, when I compare those two characters, which is why there should be a weird kind of, if there's going to be a conflict between two characters, it'll be those two. And I think they are going to play into that on this series. I won't go much further with all the other things that happen throughout the years with the character, because I don't think they're really relevant. But I do believe that at some point, if they would probably are following the idea that, she was part of the Brotherhood of Evil, but she kind of betrayed them, and she probably took the form of Rita Farr, and that was maybe how she connected with the Chief, and maybe the Chief, knowing that's maybe what put him on the track to Rita Farr, and then that's why he swooped in or did what I think her origins are going to be tied to Madame Rouge, because everyone. Cliff's situation and Larry's situation are very different than Rita's situation. Because Rita's situation was like, that didn't have to happen.
Right.
I'm not saying it's any better or worse, but that's the one that's like, that's a weird one. Whereas the other two, they were like pretty much gonna be dead otherwise. Even though either he was actually responsible for the accident or responsible for the plane, they've kind of made it that he is, but I think he was. I think they were on the road to ruin already. Anyway, right. That's kind of the way I kind of see it. I might have rambled a bit there. I apologize. But I think she's I've always thought she was a very interesting character that pops up from time to time throughout DC history. And introducing her here, the potential there, is great for some really interesting storylines. I like that they're playing up the mystery of it. I do feel that means I'm assuming we're going to be in store for they're either going to go one of two routes. We're either going to have a lot of flashback heavy stuff as the season moves forward, or the fact that they've made her a time traveler means we'll get to see things play out by virtue of traveling through time. So, which I think is just based on the weird trailers they did for this show and all the promotional art makes me think I think they might go that route. Even though at this point we're like, okay, does every single show I watch have to get time travel worked in there somehow? I love time travel, but it seems like they're all doing it now,
Right. Well, my thought with her time travel is one of two things happens, and that is either, she goes bad, they defeat her, she flies straight and decides to be good. And because of who the actress is, and she's been a regular and been on a lot of shows, that maybe if Timothy Dalton is bowing out, maybe she becomes sort of the new chief, the new de facto leader of the Doom Patrol in that role. And goes throughout time and sends him messages or whatever. I don't believe that, but that's a possibility I could see happening because of the actress they hired to play the role. But the other possibility is that what plays out, and then she takes them back in time to save Chief, and he's restored for season 4.
I'm more inclined to go with the latter.
Yeah, me too. That's
mainly if only because I would just for me, I would just be like, no, you can't make Madame Rouge the. It would just be. I mean, I get it, and it makes sense. I mean, I'm not. It would just for me personally, it would just bother me too much. Like, no. Just take random blah 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 villain, and like all of a sudden you're gonna put this someone's always been a villain, but they're gonna be in charge of that whatever. But like I said, she does go back and forth. She does. She has that about her nature. There have been a number of times she's she switches sides, so she can't be. So she can't. Well, she also means she can't really be trusted. But it's very interesting. We'll see what they do. I was actually dismayed when the season opened and they were killing off, presumably looking like they were killing off the chief, only because I'm like, does Timothy Dalton really have that much going on? Because, come on, it was like, again, he's only going to be here for just a few minutes? Come on, dude. Then, because right now, that's just a paper mache head of yours. It might as well be the head that Rita made in that little weird scarecrow thing or the scary Bob Ross or whatever it was Cliff kept calling it.
Yeah, scary Bob Ross.
But talk about it's like I kept thinking like, wait, what are you jealous of like Frasier and Bomer's deal? It's like, oh, I'm just going to be a voice on the show now. It's like, oh, everybody's hope you people are all getting paid scale for this then. Anyway, yeah, I mean, I'm just so intrigued by how they're going to handle this and what they're doing. And I like that because, I mean, I love season 1 and I like season 2, but the one thing that this has that those two didn't, for me personally, I didn't have that sense of mystery of wondering how this was, what they were doing and how this was going to play out. I mean, Mr. Nobody was a fantastic character, whatever, but I got it. It's like, okay, you want to screw with the chief and mess around with them. That's what we're going to be doing. Okay. I already got your origin. I got it. In season 2, the stuff with Dorothy and the Candlemaker, there was a little bit of, okay, I'm starting to get a little weary of and tolerating this at this point, but I wasn't that, I kind of got it from the get-go, from the very first episode. I was like, okay, it's like an imaginary evil friend come to life essentially, and he just grows more powerful over the years, and she is the way she is. Well, we get that weird origin story about how Dorothy came to be. It's like, okay, which also coincidentally is my least favorite episode of Doom Patrol. But this one, I'm like, oh, I'm not, because the fact is they have and can change whatever they want. And again, I'm also reaching into my memory or looking crap up on Wikipedia when I don't remember stuff. They can go so many different ways, and you got a stellar actress to do the part. I'm fascinated by what they're going to do, and part of me is also hoping one of the results is that it's beneficial to the Rita Farr character, and I love the actress and her depiction of the character, but I kind of want her to be stronger, which is something about this, which is the part of the whole situation with her character, is that she's trying to find that strength. I want her to. I don't want it to always be dissolving into a pile of goo.
Well, I think since the chief said she was the one he trusted to leave in charge, I think we'll see that journey where she's stronger by the end, based on the way it was framed initially. Right. But yeah, I mean, she's the one he trusts the most, and she made a mistake. That there's interesting mysteries that I love, who contacted the luggage for Gargwax, who made the phone call she didn't answer.
Right.
Is that Madame Rouge's good side calling to warn her the bad side's on the way?
Right.
Like, something like that. And I think mystery works really good with this group of characters because they're not exactly Batman. Just like with Gargoax in the dining hall, the only real detective that runs stuff down is Cyborg.
Right.
The rest of them just sort of bumble through and take things head on, in an endearing way, but they're not real deep thinkers or problem solvers.
Right. It's just it's just not what they do. Oh, by the way, just one last. I can't believe I didn't mention this. It's always funny. It's almost jarring, pleasantly jarring, but still jarring when someone makes an overt comic book reference on the show. Because they've done that. I remember them doing that a couple times in the previous seasons. They would name drop a character, whatever. But it was always and the fact that I believe it's in Undead Patrol. Willoughby is the one who actually makes a comment and refers to them as, as he's trying to get them to come along with him. And he refers to them as the Solomon's Grundy.
Yeah.
And I went, wow, he just dropped a Solomon Grundy reference? Holy shit. Anyway.
And a couple of things before I forget, I just want to mention.
Sure.
Undead Patrol, like when they were becoming zombies, probably is as funny and gross as this show could be, with showing the deterioration of all of them. And in the last episode, it had two things that, again, we had a really impressive. If it was Michelle Rodriguez, really impressive, her mimicking that dance or doing that dance. And we had, we love the old pop a VCR in and watch something reveal. And that, I thought that was really interesting done. It almost had like a horror movie feel of the way it would show the woman looking directly at you. Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of reveals that make this season more exciting to follow than perhaps last season. Right.
Absolutely. And by the way, Michelle Gomez, not Michelle Rodriguez.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I thought you were talking about Lost for a second there. Yeah, it's and
I got lost.
Yeah, you got lost in her eyes. It's everything we've already mentioned that you were saying, as far as the mysteries about who made the call, who contacted the trunk box thing, what more, what's the real connection between her and Calder and the Brotherhood of Evil? What's all this all about? Who's the melty face guy who knows Rita and in the afterlife, and what's that all about? I love that stuff. That's to me, you're just planting all these seeds, and I can't wait for them to come into bloom as the season goes on. Love that shit.
Right. Totally agree. And I will say, through 4 episodes, I definitely am enjoying this more than season 2.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely. Again, I enjoyed season 2. I'm just, at this point, I'm just so much more intrigued by this. And I'm like going, ooh, there's so much I'm still not really sure where we're going to go. And I feel there's so much more to be revealed, not just with her character and is there an actual other big bad that's going to come? Is it going to come from the past as, with the Brotherhood of Evil stuff? Is it going to be something totally different? Is it going to be a conglomeration of other things? I am excited that I love the not knowing.
Right.
And I always hope that when I do know the payoff is worth it. I think it will be, because I do know some of the background of this, and no matter how, I don't think they can veer too much away from it, but I think they will, and it'll be enjoyably fun as a result.
Right. Totally agree.
Okay. I think that'll be it for the first 4 episodes. We will try to, if at all possible, it depends on our respective schedules. In a perfect world, Brian and I hope to be able to cover episode by episode moving on, but if it looks like if that's too difficult based on our schedules, we may do them in little chunks. So we may do a few episodes at a time. We'll see. We haven't planned that far ahead. It's amazing we're doing even this one. I did promise a number of times that I was at least going to touch on why The Last Man that came out about a few weeks ago, I guess it premiered on September 13th, the FX on Hulu or whatever. I don't know why they're bothering to call it FX on Hulu. It's just on Hulu. And I know that there actually are a few people out there who actually are waiting for me to opine on it because I have not said anything about it online. I know we're pressed for time, so I'll just try to quickly spit this out. As far as Why the Last Man is concerned, we are now, I guess we're 5 episodes deep in this premiere season. This is a really long-awaited adaptation of the Brian K. Vaughan's fantastic comic book series. And people keep asking me, well, how is it? How is it far? Okay, it's good. Imagine the Good is written in italics when I say that. They've made some significant changes from the comic book. They're taking far longer. They took way longer for Yorick and Agent 355 to meet up with Dr. Mann, who is one of the 3 principals from the series very early on. I'm assuming anyone who's listening to me talk about Why the Last Man already knows the premise. So that's why I didn't say it from the get-go. The premise is, basically everyone with a Y chromosome, because you have to say it that way nowadays.
Everything.
And everything. Right. Thank you. I had forgotten that until it's mentioned. It's like, oh yeah, that's right. I remember thinking, that's actually more tragic. I don't care about all the dudes and the world dying, but all the male tigers and bears and kitty cats, and it's all about the kitty cats. Anyway, in the series, they've also really built up the character of his mother, who's played, reasonably nicely by Diane Lane. Everyone likes Diane Lane. But they really infused more of the politics into the story, which I know they're very much trying to mirror a bit of what's happened in this country over the past several years. That's why you end up with a character like Amber Tamblyn has basically kept playing a character that, is that supposed to be Meghan McCain right there? Because she kind of feels like her, or one part this, one part that. The missing girlfriend of Yorick, she's no longer already in Australia, which she was in the comics, but presumably she's somewhere in the U.S. They also, I'll give them a lot of credit. They did a really nice job building up the character of the sister Hero, because she was never really focused on quite as much or with as much depth as far as I can remember. And they took a chance because there's a lot of reasons not to like her. Just as a character, why should I like this character? But it's like, but I like the fact that they've done that. They've taken her. I love the idea of taking a character whose name is Hero, and it's like, oh, you're really hard for me to like.
Right.
So basically, I like some of the changes. Maybe even I like most of the changes. So at this point, you're going, well, then sounds like you must really like the show. And we already touched on when I made my snarky comment about the Y chromosome. I will give them all the credit in the world that they have tried to address the issue of transgender people, which I knew was going to be really tricky, not only to acknowledge, but to really utilize in a story that, when it was written, 17, whatever number of years ago, it was built around the death of, every male, whatever. No, we got to make sure. No, it's every person with a Y chromosome. I get that. It's a smart. I'm glad they came up with a way to address it. It actually works for various scenes and one new character that they created for the show. So I give them all the credit for doing that. Again, it sounds like I'm really raving about the show, and I'm not putting down the show. They've got a budget. They're doing things well, whatever. But it feels like there's something missing for me. And I know there's part of it where it's almost like being burned out on post-apocalyptic style stories. Because we've seen so many of them over the years. Like anything with zombies is basically post-apocalyptic. Anything like The Road, anything after a massive nuclear war, anything like The Stand, anything, it goes on and on. And again, this has been a genre that's been mined for decades upon decades. I mean, Charlton Heston, built his later years of his career on this kind of stuff. And I think what made the comic stand out was the Yorick character really felt like us. And he was a very well-written, really funny, really interesting, fun character to root for, and the bizarreness of his situation. And while there's nothing wrong with the actor playing Yorick, it still, for whatever reason, just isn't capturing how I saw that character. That doesn't mean it won't, his performance or how they depict that character might not improve over the course of the series. But right now, I don't think much of him. And I couldn't say that when I read the comic. The comic, I cared so much about that character, and it was about his journey and whatever. And I feel, I get them making it about everybody else. I think that makes sense because it's, what's happened to the world. I also want to applaud the show because unless I'm mistaken, I think they've really taken it to a fascinating extreme. I think all the directors and possibly, not including Brian K. Vaughan himself, possibly most, if not all the writers are all women on the show. So, huzzah for doing that. That's a great idea, especially considering what the show is about. But I just feel maybe they work so hard on building up and working with all these other characters, they kind of drop the ball a little bit on who the main character actually is. And that's probably what's troubling me about the series. Again, I like it. I'm going to keep watching it. I may talk about it. I probably will talk about it again on a future podcast, but that's been my issue. And like I said, I can't really put my finger. It's not that he's bad. It's not that, when I read that back, 15 years ago, I was imagining like a young Shia LaBeouf playing that character or something like that. And look at the freak he became. But I don't know. It's just, I want it to be better. And I keep watching. It's like, I don't know what's wrong. What's bothering me about it? And I love the introduction of the Dr. Mann character in this last episode. She's a great, I love her. I always liked her in the comics. I really liked the way they did her as well. But it's him. He's a little too schmucky. And he should be a schmuck at times, but he's too schmucky.
He's a little one note whiny. Like yes. He's not rounded out enough. He's a little too entitled and whiny.
Yeah.
And what should be whimsical about him, that he taught magic and stuff, is presented in a way almost that makes him more pathetic than amusing. Yeah. And I think that they need to build him up a little bit more, that he's somebody whose danger you care about.
Right. Because right now he feels kind of exactly what you said, and then we add to it useless.
Yeah.
And while there's I get this part of me that's like, oh, that's kind of interesting and unique because it's, the one, I'm going to put air quotes just to protect myself here, the one quote unquote actual male character on the show, and he would be the one who's like useless, and he's basically he's the damsel in distress if anyone is on the show, whatever. But it's like, no, but he just should be a stronger character. And maybe I'm hoping they do more as the series goes on. So we'll see. I'm going to keep watching it. I again, love the original source material. It's fun. I have them in these beautiful pristine hardcovers. It's, I wouldn't sell them even when I was trying to selling all my comics for food. But I just, again, it's one of those things. I just want it to be better.
Right. I get that.
That's all. It's, it's, when I say that about some shows that have, a much bigger hill to climb, I could say that about, I could say that about, from season 1.5 of Flash on, I want it to be better, but that I want to be a lot better. This just,
right.
But it's because it's the main character. It's a pro show. Okay. I feel like we better pull the plug here because I know we're pressed for time. I know Brian made some time for us, but I know Brian's got to get moving. So with that said, if you enjoyed this podcast, and how could you not? This was really a good podcast, and I think my voice sounded amazing. You probably have Brian, you always sound good. Who gives a fuck? But I sounded great. You will enjoy hanging out on our Facebook page. It's a Serious TV Drama Podcast page. Like the page and join the conversation about shows like the two we just mentioned, like the shows that we didn't get to talk about, like other things about Stargirl. Shade is great on Stargirl. Have you been in the Shade? It's amazing. Anyway, but what happened to Joel McHale? Anyway, I'm gonna talk about the other shows while I do the ending here. I mean, they introduced him in the first episode. Where has he been? Anyway. Where's the Thunderbolt? Come on, Jakeem. Anyway, where can you find our podcast? You know what? You can find our podcast wherever podcasts can be found. Spotify, Amazon Music, whatever. No, we're not on Pandora. Fuck that shit. But you can find pretty much all of our podcasts, not pretty much all of our podcasts, all 300 and whatever number we're up to now because I didn't write it down. You can find it all at stvdpodcast.podbean.com. undeadpatrol.com. They're all there. Please, for the love of God, follow us on Instagram. Why, if you have Instagram, why wouldn't you follow us? What is wrong with you? Our Instagram tag there is Serious TV Drama is one word. And also, we have a Twitter feed. Follow us on Twitter. Our Twitter handle there is at STVD Podcast. STVD, of course, as in Serious TV Drama. Like I said, we'll be back hopefully soon to talk more about Doom Patrol. I'll be back with Dan in about later this week with the latest Breaking Bad podcast. We've already recorded it, but I haven't edited it yet. And I think me and Dan might actually get together for a little weird, unexpected podcast in the next 24 to 36 hours. We'll see. You'll see it on your feed because I don't want to promise you what it is because then we won't do it. Anyway, Brian, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about Doom Patrol.
It was really enjoyable. It was good to reconnect with you after a while, Scott.
It was always good to talk to you, Brian. And I hope you all enjoyed it out there, too. And with that, I don't have a good ending line, so I'll just say I'll see you next time.
See ya.